water screams. It doesn't roar, it screams. Beneath the hull of the flagship, the Myeongnyang Strait is less a body of water and more a hydraulic grinder, a bottleneck of violent currents that rip through the Korean peninsula's southern tip with the force of a breaking dam. The date is October 26, 1597. The air tastes of salt, terror, and impending death. To understand the gravity of this moment, you have to look at the math. It is the math of a massacre. On the horizon, emerging from the morning sea mist like a floating city of wood and iron, is the Japanese Navy. They bring over 300 ships. 133 of them are heavy warships, Atakebune, bristling with musketeers, seasoned samurai, and a hunger to finish a war that has dragged on for 6 bloody years. They are the finest naval force in Asia, perhaps the world. They have conquered land, burned cities, and shattered the Korean defense. Standing against them is a ghost. Admiral Yi Sun-sin stands on the deck of his flagship. He is a man who shouldn't be here. Months ago, he was stripped of his rank, tortured by his own king for refusing suicidal orders, and left to rot in a cell. He was released only because the entire Korean Navy, save for a tiny splinter group, was annihilated in his absence at the Battle of Myeongnyang. When he was reinstated, the king sent him a letter advising him to disband the navy and join the ground forces. The king thought the war at sea was over. Yi sent back a letter that would echo through history. "Your Majesty, I still have 12 ships." He actually has 13 now, having salvaged one more. 13 Panokseon, flat-bottomed, boxy, sturdy fortresses of pine against an armada of 300. The ratio is 23-1. Every single man on his deck is trembling. They are farmers, fishermen, and broken soldiers. They look at the horizon, then they look at their admiral, and they see a dead man walking. They know that to fight is to die. They are already looking for the shoreline, calculating if they can jump and swim before the Japanese muskets tear them apart. But Yi isn't looking at the Japanese ships. He is looking at the water. He chose this spot, the Myeongnyang Strait. The locals call it the Roaring Currents. It is narrow, only about 300 meters wide at its tightest point. Every few hours, the tide shifts and the water rushes through at 10 knots, creating whirlpools strong enough to capsize a fishing boat, eddies that can spin a warship like a top. It is a navigational nightmare, and it is Yi's only ally. "The enemy comes," a lookout screams, his voice cracking. The mist burns off. The Japanese vanguard approaches. They are led by Kurushima Michifusa, a pirate king turned daimyo, a man who lives for the slaughter. His banners snap in the wind. He sees the 13 Korean ships huddled in the strait's mouth and he laughs. This isn't a battle, it's a cleanup operation. He signals the attack. The Japanese fleet is so massive they crowd each other, jostling for the honor of the first kill. They funnel into the strait. This is the trap. Admiral Yi draws his sword. It is a massive two-handed blade, inscribed with the words, "One sweep of the sword stains the mountains and rivers with blood." He orders his anchors dropped. Wait, dropped? Yes. While the other 12 Korean ships hang back, paralyzed by fear, drifting toward the shoreline, Yi anchors his single flagship directly in the center of the strait. He turns his broadside to the enemy. He effectively chains himself to the seabed in the path of a tsunami. It is an act of insanity. It is an act of absolute defiance. "Fire!" Yi bellows. The Panokseon is a tank on water. Unlike the Japanese ships, which are built for speed and boarding actions, the Korean ships are built for stability and heavy artillery. Cannons roar from the gun ports. The earth and black cannons spew iron bolts and stone balls. The narrow strait clusters the Japanese ships together. They can't maneuver. They trip over each other. The first volley smashes into the Japanese vanguard. Wood splinters. Bodies cartwheel into the churning white water. But there are too many of them. The Japanese musketeers, armed with Portuguese-style arquebuses, unleash a rain of lead. The air around Yi hisses with bullets. His shield bearers struggle to keep pace. Arrows thump into the deck. For hours, it is one ship against 133. Yi is everywhere, loading cannons, shooting arrows, shouting orders.
He is a demon of war. But his other ships are still hiding, hovering a mile back, watching their commander fight alone. They are waiting for him to die so they can flee. Yi sees this. He is furious. He is not afraid of the Japanese. He is afraid of his own men's cowardice. He does something unthinkable in the heat of combat. He orders a signal flag raised and turns his ship mid-combat to row toward his own cowardly captains. He screams across the water, his voice cutting through the cannon fire. Do you want to be executed by military law? Do you think you can live by running away? The threat hits them harder than the Japanese bullets. To disobey Yi is death. To fight the Japanese is death. But Yi is terrifyingly alive. Shamed, two captains, Kim Eungham and An Wi, row their ships forward into the fray. Now there are three. The Japanese commander, Kurushima, sees the new ships. He orders his flagship, a towering multi-decked vessel, to charge. He wants to board. If the Japanese get close enough to use their swords, the Koreans are finished. The samurai are the finest swordsmen in the world. The Korean oarsmen are peasants. The Japanese flagship surges forward, riding the incoming tide. It's closing the distance. 50 yards, 40. The muskets are hammering the Korean decks. Men are falling. The wood is slick with blood. But then, the sound changes. A deep, guttural groan rises from the seabed. The water turns white. The ships shudder violently. The tide has turned. This is the moment Yi was waiting for. This is the strategy. The current, which had been flowing north, pushing the Japanese into the strait, suddenly stops and reverses. It blasts south with the force of a freight train. The heavy, deep-drafted Korean Panokseon ships are hard to move, but they are stable. The Japanese ships, however, are top-heavy, V-hulled, and packed tightly together. As the current reverses, the water in the strait becomes a chaotic washing machine of whirlpools. The Japanese formation collapses. Ships slam into one another. Hulls crack. Masts tangle. The vanguard is pushed backward, physically ramming into the ships behind them. It is a traffic pileup of epic proportions. The Japanese ships are spinning out of control, helpless against the hydraulic power of the ocean. Ram them, Yi orders. The Korean ships, rowing with the current now, smash into the disorganized Japanese blob. It is a slaughter. The Koreans rain arrows and cannonballs onto the decks of ships that are spinning in circles. Then comes the moment of the twist, the psychological break. A Japanese body floats near Yi's flagship. It is wearing ornate armor. A defector on Yi's ship, a former Japanese soldier named Junsa, looks over the rail and points. That is him. That is the Matara, Kurushima. Yi orders the body fished out. It is indeed the Pirate King Kurushima Michifusa. He is dead or dying. Yi does not hesitate. He orders the head cut off. Moments later, the head of the Japanese high commander is hoisted atop the mast of the Korean flagship. The effect is instantaneous. The Japanese sailors, already fighting the ocean, battling cannon fire, and watching their ships shatter, look up and see their leader's severed head staring down at them. The invincible armada, the samurai spirit, it breaks. Panic spreads like a virus. It isn't a retreat, it's a rout. The Japanese turn to flee, but the current is dragging them back, and the Korean ships are hunting them down. The narrow strait, the trap, has become a coffin. By sunset, 31 Japanese warships are sunk or crippled. The rest are fleeing in terror. And Yi Sun-sin? He hasn't lost a single ship, not one. As the sun dips below the horizon, painting the blood-streaked water in hues of purple and gold, the silence returns to Myeongnyang. The screaming currents settle into a low hum. Yi stands on the deck, wiping the soot from his face. He looks at his shaking men, who are now cheering, weeping, realizing they have just survived the impossible. Yi writes in his war diary that night, with characteristic humility and stoicism. This was truly a miracle of heaven. But it wasn't just heaven, it was terrain, timing, and a will of iron. It was the calculated use of fear, both the enemy's and his own. In the history of naval warfare, from Salamis to Midway, there is perhaps no greater feat of tactical brilliance than the Battle of Myeongnyang. It is the story of how 13 stood against 300 and how the water itself bowed to the command of one man. It is the reminder that in war, numbers are just numbers, but terrain is a weapon and leadership is everything. The Japanese never recovered their naval dominance in the war. The supply lines were cut, the invasion stalled, the ghost had broken the back of the giant, and he did it with 12 ships, a sword, and the turning of the tide.